so I'm going to start by talking about a little bit about our goals, and then we'll have our team introduce themselves as well. So our goals are pretty high level today. This is, I want to make clear what the workshop is and what it isn't. And so we're going to take a bird's eye view of the process of moving a course online. There are other workshops available throughout the week for individual tools, for getting in-depth knowledge of Zoom and Blackboard and how to do things within those tools. This is going to be more about the pedagogy, how to translate your teaching philosophy into an online environment, how to identify a learning goal, and choose teaching methods in a digital environment that are going to help you and your students meet those goals. So it's an overview of key information and evidence-based tips about this transition. We want to help you identify those learning goals and core teaching practices that are necessary to help the students meet those goals. We will talk generally about how to identify digital tools, offer some suggestions, but again, the more detailed discussions of individual tools will be through FTDC workshops that are running all week long. And then we want to, most importantly, and this is at the end of the workshop, share with you additional resources that are available at the university to help throughout the week. Our agenda for today, we're going to do some introductions in a second. I'll give you some instructions. One of the things we want to do today is model effective teaching within the Zoom environment and other online environments. So give you some instructions about how to participate and how to navigate Zoom. Some key information about making this transition, both that center center students in the process and also yourselves in this redesign. We have an activity prepared. Patty O'Sullivan will walk you through, we'll give some examples. I myself will pull up one of my own syllabi from the past, and Juan and I, who you'll meet in a second, will have a conversation about decision points that I am making about, that I would make about the content and how to translate it into a digital environment. Jennifer Bland is here, and she's going to talk about accessibility and the key things to be thinking about in terms of accessibility. And then Bob Cummings will round out the presentation with some resources that we have here that are available to you, and Q&A as well. We want to leave plenty of time for you to ask your questions. So you know who I am. I'm going to pass it to Juan to introduce herself.
Hi, my name is Juan Latatra, and I am in the Instruction Design and Training Specialist with Academic Outreach, and I've been working with online faculty.
Great, thank you. Patty.
I don't have volume up.
Hi, everyone. I'm Patty O'Sullivan, and I'm a program manager in academic innovation.
Thank you. Nancy.
Hi, I'm Nancy Wiggers. I'm the Associate Director for Instructional Support with CEDL.
Great, thank you. Jennifer.
Good morning, I'm Jennifer Bland, an Accessibility Specialist in the Division of Outreach.
Thank you. And Bob.
Hey, good morning, everybody. Bob Cummings, Executive Director of Academic Innovation. Excited to be here.
All right, and we are just a handful of a big team that's been working on this project and many of the resources that we'll talk about at the end of the workshop as well. Okay, in order to navigate Zoom and this process and even fold it into your own teaching, I'm going to ask Juan to kind of walk through some of the basics of this platform.
Yes, and we want you to feel free to ask questions whenever you need to. On the bottom menu of Zoom, you will notice, of course, on the left-hand side with the microphone and the video, and we ask that you keep your microphone unmute until you have questions to ask when we pause for questions. But at any time, feel free to use the chat box. You can click that chat icon, open the chat box, and type your question there, and we'll monitor the chat box, and we'll answer your questions through the chat.
Excellent, thanks, Juan. And again, Nancy is intrepidly navigating the chat box, so she will let us know when you have those questions. Okay, so we want to start before we get it, before we actually talk about the key components of a redesign from face-to-face into online or remote learning. We want to talk about some of the key information that we know that faculty and students are thinking about and that has come to our attention as key issues that that folks are seeking clarity on. So first of all, we want to really think. We want to start with the students, placing students at the center of this process. And one thing is absolutely true, and not just here, but across the country, understandably, students are stressed and very anxious about this disruption, much like us. But they're going to be looking to us as their teachers to provide some stability. And so we can talk about ways to do that. One of the most basic, communicating with them early and as often as possible. So if you haven't yet sent your class an email, just letting them know, even something as basic as saying, more information to come, but I want to let you know I'm here and I'm working working to get this course online as soon as possible. Even if it's just that, communicating with them as soon as possible will help reassure them a bit, and at least start the ball rolling in terms of future communications. One way that I know many of us are recommending as both a way to communicate with your students, build your presence into the course, but also to practice this technology that may or may not be new to you, is to create a short welcome video where you can share certainly your feelings about the disruption. One thing that we know from research about teaching in a crisis is that there's only one thing that we shouldn't do, and that one thing that we shouldn't do is not talk about the crisis, right? That is the thing that kind of undermines the teaching the most. So a welcome video acknowledging the challenging situation, talking about your goals for the rest of the semester, welcoming them into this new kind of community. This goes a long way to not only developing some of that presence that you'll want to build into your course, but again, it also allows you to practice using some of this new technology. Lots of ways that you can make that video. It's fairly easy to do in Zoom, but there are other ways that you can do that as well. Hosting virtual office hours, again, being there to respond to questions. There are good platforms for this. It'll keep your email inbox a little bit freer if you host virtual. You could also do it through Slack. It doesn't have to be video. You could do it through Slack or Teams or another kind of platform like that. But having those kinds of conversations and answering questions in a different format will help them, and it will help you keep your email inbox clear, because I know they're probably piling up. Here's one just to think about. Given the circumstances that we're in, the fact that students will be juggling lots of different courses in new environments, and the emotional component that they will be bringing to this work, it's not a bad idea to at least consider an alternative grading model, or talking to those of us on the Keep Teaching team about an alternative grading model. We're thinking here about contract grading, specifications grading, lots of different ways, but de-emphasizing the role of evaluation to be able to mitigate the emotions and help them with the actual learning that you want to have happen. Now's as good a time as any to at least think about that and to talk to us about what that would look like. We're going to talk more about this as we go on, but in addition to the Keep Teaching resources that you've probably already seen, the university is also developing a Keep Learning resource page for students with lots of different information that they need to know about financial aid, the Writing Center, counseling, ways to maintain continuity on all fronts for them. And perhaps even more, given this situation, perhaps even more important than the content we're teaching, is helping students to feel that they are part of our community, a part of our classes, and to really enhance that belonging by building our presence into the course. They need to see you, and they will want to see you and hear from you as much as possible. Okay, more information about students. And so some of these are equity issues. Some students may not have reliable access to internet service, or may only be able to access your course through their mobile devices. And so some of the decisions that we need to make then about redesign have to take those students into consideration. A lot of these platforms are accessible through our mobile devices, not all are. And so as much as we can keep those factors in mind, and the university is also thinking about this and making decisions with this in mind as well. But think of our classroom communities, our students, as having a wide range of access to the very tools they need to be able to take our courses. If you're using discussion and chat features in your online courses, it's important to just offer as a reminder that one of our responsibilities in building those spaces is to make sure that they are safe for all participants. And as we think about inclusive digital pedagogy, that's an important consideration. So to cultivate an environment where you have active moderation of those spaces. I'm sure we have all been in perhaps social media communities that were both moderated and unmoderated, and you know the difference between those two things. And so active moderation on the part of faculty would be important for cultivating that kind of environment. Accessibility, Jennifer's going to talk about this much more towards the end, but it still has to be a core part of our pedagogy. But you know, we're sort of, flexibility is important here. Captioning in that vein is only required, is not required unless you have a student in your course who requires that as an accommodation. There are many other kinds of questions connected to that. Jennifer will touch on those, and then you can contact accessibility@olemiss.edu with more detailed questions and concerns. Finally, two other things. The most equitable model for online teaching, and this is true for both them and for you, is asynchronous modalities. And what we mean by that, a synchronous mode of teaching is everyone is in the same place at the same time. Asynchronous breaks that model, and everyone is doing their own work when they can log on and get to it. So it's broken out of that time restraint. That's important because students are going to be juggling lots of different courses, and you know the realities of the complexities of this situation as well. So the more you can make asynchronous, the better the outcome. The better for students, the better for you. And it really, I think, responds to the constraints that we're in. Setting up a Zoom account, which you have already done, but that'll be important to communicate with students as well. General pedagogical considerations that we're going to bring to bear on this conversation today. First of all, this is really important. Do not feel pressure to quickly become an expert in an online environment. That is not at all what this situation is about. In fact, we're calling it remote teaching because it's something entirely different from online education, right? What this is an academic triage situation. We need to find the most efficient way to reach our learning goals in a digital environment given the constraints that we are in. So think of it that way. It's kind of a triage response in a learning environment. So as part of that, flexibility and improvisation will be two important things to think about. Things will go wrong in these online environments, and that's okay. We can have people to help. We're going to work this out. Students will be tolerant of this. So we need flexibility is going to be really important. The ability to go off book, off the blueprint, if the context demands it, also really important. We can sketch out a plan and we can sketch out an approach, but we may have to alter it as we go, and that's okay. And building that in as an expectation early on when you communicate with students, I think will absolutely be key. From a pedagogical perspective, cognitive load, which is how much our brains can hold at any one time, metaphorically speaking, is going to be a huge issue in the coming weeks. So not only, most of the time as teachers, we do a cognitive load simply with the material that we're teaching, building new networks of knowledge. And that's still going to be true, but now there's the added cognitive load of learning new tech platforms and new modalities. And so thinking about scaffolding even more than we currently do. That's breaking down activities and presentations, lectures, assignments into smaller and smaller units to build up to a larger or more complex concept will be absolutely critical. So keeping cognitive load in mind, I think it will benefit us down the road. We want to build in opportunities for students to collaborate. Again, this is community and presence are essential for online environments, for remote learning. And so the more you can use different platforms like Google Hangouts, Zoom breakout sessions to have them working together in small groups, the more effective and more collaborative and more community-like these courses will feel. And finally, this is from a pedagogical standpoint, this is key. We talk about active learning a lot in face-to-face environments, but it matters in online environments too. So let's just take the example of a recorded lecture, right? Now, we may lecture in our classrooms when we can respond to different dynamics within that classroom, but moving a lecture to an online environment changes the game. And so first of all, if you want to do that as part of your content, you need to be thinking about, will it be your own lecture? Will it be content that you found online? And once you decide that, how will you break it up into significant, in chunks that will allow students to process that information and then apply it? That gets back to the cognitive load issue. How do we make modules rather than continuous content? So that's one aspect of it in terms of active learning in an online space. And also with video lectures, either your own or someone else's, you'll need to build in mechanisms to assure that students watch them. If this is a key part of the learning, they have to watch the lecture in order to learn. And then how will they apply it? There are tools that you can use to build questions into a video. Juan and the instructional designers here know a ton about that. One that I really love is called Edpuzzle, which integrates with YouTube. You can build questions right into it. So there are lots of ways to think about this, but you have to keep students active participants in the learning, especially in environments like this. Finally, you matter too. That's definitely a message we want to send. You're doing a lot of hard work and there's a lot of stress involved. You don't have to feel like you have all the answers. You can be honest with them and let them know that step by step you're going to work through this with them in the class. Don't get bogged down trying to make the course perfect, right? We want to identify learning goals and meet those learning goals as efficiently as possible. Again, it's a triage environment. Make sure you're taking care of yourself, and we are here to help. We have a whole team of folks who are here to help you with this process. Bob will share resources at the end of the presentation that with all of our contact information, the best way to access the team that is put together to help you with this. Now, I'm going to transition to Patty in just 1 second as we start kind of the workshop portion of this where we walk you through a redesign activity. But I want you to look at the screen below that title, and I want, this is a model that we've been piloting. It's basic pedagogy, but I want you to think about it in terms of just this formula. We want to have a learning goal plus a teaching strategy plus an easy to use tool to replicate that strategy. And that's going to be a big win for us in this environment. So if you think about the redesign using that formula, learning goal plus teaching strategy plus digital tool, it streamlines the process, puts students at the center, and pairs that with efficiency in a really important way. So I'm going to turn it over to Patty I'm going to stop sharing my screen in a second. I'm going to turn it over to Patty to walk you through the beginning of an activity that allows you to conceptualize that process. Okay. Patty.
Thanks, Josh. Hi, everyone. So just wanted to point out something Zoom-wise. So Josh was sharing his screen. And now I'm going to share my screen. And again, this is something you can do with your students can do with each other. I'm just pressing the little share green button at the bottom of the video. It's going to pop up a bunch of options for me. I'm choosing my desktop and then I'm pressing the share button. So hopefully you can see my desktop right now. Just give me like a thumbs up or a, okay, good. All right, so yeah, I hope you're all doing okay. This is trying times for all of us. But what we wanted to share with you is a way to achieve the learning goals in your teaching, even though you might have to cut out some content. So backwards design is the best way to think about this. And this flow chart, I think, illustrates that really well, that you want to start with your learning goals, and then think about your assessments. How are you going to assess whether or not the students achieve those learning goals? And then develop some practice activities for them to get to practice so that their learning can be measured. And then you get to the content. So rather than focusing on the content first, we can focus on the learning goals. So let me just show you a little chart of what that might look like. So Josh developed this chart. This chart, we're going to have you think about this. What are some of the most basic learning goals in your class, or the ones that are remaining in the next 6 weeks? You know, what are 3 things you want students to master in the next 3 weeks? So I'm actually going to give you a minute to think about that for a second. If you have a pen and paper, or you have another tab open, you can maybe write those down or just think about them in your head. But yeah, just be thinking about 3 things. If you could only accomplish 3 things for the rest of the semester, 3 learning goals, what would they be? This is the part of teaching that we like to call a Quaker meeting style teaching, where you're comfortable with the pauses, comfortable with the silence. Does anyone want to share out a learning goal? Just go ahead and unmute yourself and start sharing with us.
In Spanish, one of my goals would be to teach the subjunctive tense, the subjunctive mood in Spanish.
All right, good.
In recreation management, our next unit was risk management. So we're going to be trying to understand what a risk management plan is and using the current situation as our basis.
That's awesome. Very appropriate.
In public policy leadership, I have a objective that the course will enhance student abilities to think, speak, and write critically and effectively in a public policy context.
I teach a business communications class, and one of the goals for the rest of this semester was to interview someone in the business world, could create a PowerPoint presentation and present it to the class. And I'm still determined to do that. I communicated with the students yesterday, continue to work on that, and we set up some class deadlines, which were still in the syllabus. So that's going to be my next challenge, and I think we'll be using Zoom. So thank you.
All right, well, and I would love to hear the learning goals of all 193 people in this presentation. We don't have time for that, but that was a really great sampling. And so we just have this, and we'll provide this to you in the Keep Teaching resources eventually, but we just made this very simple chart where you think about what's the content that you're focused on now, or what is the content that you think is the bare minimum to reach these learning goals with your students. What are the teaching methods that you currently use? What are some of the teaching methods that you maybe could transition to in a digital environment? And then maybe brainstorm some of the tools or strategies that you might use to achieve these. And then finally, thinking about how might you assess differently. You know, a lot of us were used to giving in class formative assessments with maybe clickers or quick quizzes, or even just informal discussions with students. We were used to giving exams, maybe paper exams or proctored exams with Scantrons. That's just not going to be possible anymore. So we need to think of different ways that we can make sure that we've measured students' mastery of our learning goals without overtaxing ourselves. You know, I'm not saying that if you have a class of 300 people, you're going to have to read 300 research papers. That's not what we're suggesting at all. So let's just give an example here. So the colors here represent, this used to be an Irish poetry class, but we decided it would be better to make it a biology class. So here are just some basic learning objectives in biology. The objectives themselves don't matter. You can always, you know, kind of imagine inserting your own. And then I just put down some content that matched each of the learning goals. So for the first learning goal, describing levels of organization related functions in plants and animals, a very typical content source would be the diagram of a cell with parts and functions labeled. And maybe what I used to do is give a lecture with PowerPoint, and I would have slides that would show the cell and show the parts labeled, and we might talk about you know, what are the functions of each of these parts of the cell? And maybe I would follow that by some kind of practice activity, either in class or as homework, where the students would have to take a blank diagram and label it. So how would you do that? How would you do that in a digital environment? Well, you know, we could take advantage of the Google Suite that we all have access to. Students all have their Go accounts, and the Go account stands for Google. So they already have access to all of the Google apps for education and business. You have access to that too. We can talk about that later, but you also have access to a Gmail account, so you have all of the access to Google. But Zoom is also a way that you can deliver your lecture. You can post your content to Blackboard. We can help you post your slides there if you've never done that before. Or like Josh was saying, you don't have to even record yourself lecturing, particularly with something like biology. There's the problem with finding YouTube videos is there's too many. There are so many of them that you would actually have to choose between them. So, you know, this isn't about reinventing the wheel. Maybe you just find a video that already exists, and you can link to that in Blackboard or have your students watch that to deliver that same information. How would the students do a practice activity, either individually or together? You know, instead of doing a clicker survey, you could use Google Forms to do a Google survey of your students. There's a quiz mode on Google Forms. You can always set up quizzes through Blackboard. You can have them do an assignment submission through Blackboard as well. And for some of you, you're already using a learning platform like my biology lab or my Spanish lab. So you can just go ahead and maybe rely more heavily on the digital learning platform to help you out. The students are already familiar with it. It's something you've already established in your classes. I'm going to skip these other two learning objectives and just go down to assessment. So I've talked about this a little bit, but you know, if you normally did a clicker quiz in class just to check on student learning, you know, how are you going to check on student learning? Well, again, you could have them complete a quiz in Blackboard, Google Forms. You could even use Qualtrics. I don't know how many of you are familiar with that. You all have access to Qualtrics. Again, with resources, we can tell you how to get set up with that. It's very easy to use, and it's auto-graded, just like these other two are. So, you know, you don't have to hand grade everything. What if you normally have students do analysis and discussion and class in small groups or pairs? You could still have them working in pairs. They could work in pairs together, again, on Google or through Blackboard discussion. But like Josh was saying, in terms of synchronous and asynchronous, some of your students may not be able to work together because of their new schedules or just because of their new reality. So having that flexibility to say, you can work alone. If you have to work alone, it'd be better if you work in a pair. And that also just keeps the connection between students, which is really going to be important moving forward in this semester to keep that community that we have. Replacing lectures are very easy. You can make your own videos. You can replace them with YouTube videos. You can use Zoom to record yourself. You can use Google Slides or PowerPoint slides. And I know a lot of faculty like to do voiceover of PowerPoint. That's not a fantastic delivery system, but if that's the one you're comfortable with and you know, we can help you work with that. The big question probably is going to be chapter exams. You know, if you used to give big exams with multiple choice questions in class, that's just out the window now. So maybe relying on your digital learning platform if you already use one, maybe just giving more weight to student practice activities, or we can train you not in this session, but in separate sessions, how you can deliver exams through Blackboard or through Google or Qualtrics, where you have a really large pool of questions and then you randomize them. So if you're worried about the integrity of the test, like are students gonna, you know, take screenshots and share them with each other, if you have a very large pool of questions and you randomize the delivery of them to the students, believe me, the students are not gonna spend the time just to take the test 10 times to make sure they get all of those questions. And you know what? And if they do, if they're putting that much effort into cheating because they're taking the test 10 times and they're Googling the answers, they're actually learning as they do that. So that's, you know, you could call that cheating, or you could call that putting in a great deal of effort to get the answers to all the questions. So large randomized pools are a good way to maintain some of that academic integrity. So Josh, to you, I don't know if you want to pick it up from here, or do you want them to do a little more sharing out at this point?
I think maybe we'll pass it back so we have enough time for questions.
Sure. Okay. So let me get out of this mode. And I'm going to stop sharing so Josh can take it back.
Okay, thank you, Patty. And as you're beginning to detect, there is a lot of, there are definitely a lot of general principles that we can share that would apply across disciplines, but many of these decisions too will be very discipline specific. So we're here to help with those questions as well. But I want to kind of model what that process would look like. And Juan and I are just going to have a conversation. These are 2 weeks of content from a syllabus of my own. I've been at UM for less than a year, so this is from a different institution. It's been a heck of a first year, let me tell you. So what we want to do, Juan and I are going to talk through this process of making a transition between from a very traditionally taught Western literature survey to the kinds of changes I would need to make to bring that into an online environment. I'm just going to do this briefly, and she's going to help me see what some tools some tools that are available to make this process easier. So I'm just very briefly, I'm faced with these 2 weeks here. On Monday, I'm supposed to teach a very short text by an author in the Middle Ages, Marie de France, L'Envol. L'Envol is based in the Arthurian legend. Now, my courses are all very driven by discussion, responding in real time to students building knowledge together. So my first challenge is, how do I do that online? How do I replicate that same process of building concepts together if we're not all together? Right? And so I would normally start off with some background on the Arthurian. Probably there are lots of ways I could do that. I could video myself doing that. But there's also, and this is something that Patty brought up, and I really want to stress to you, do not reinvent the wheel. There is great content out there that you can pull from other places in order to bring in. So I might use something like, there's a great documentary by Terry Jones from Monty Python fame about the medieval context and things like that. I might do that, or I might video myself. Juan, what are some, for those who want to capture their own video lectures of themselves conveying this content, what are some tools that you would recommend that they use for this?
For recording video, the one thing that is free and available to all of you that you can use right now, you are staring at it. It's Zoom. And when you, after this meeting, when you go in let's say just go into your personal meeting room and kind of practice, or maybe just test out what Zoom can do on your own. You don't need a participant or an audience to do that. You notice that there is a record button that you can use, and you also see the share button that we have been using, which is share screen. So what you would do is you hit the share screen button. Of course, you have your PowerPoint or whatever screen that you want to share open, and then you share that screen. Then you head over to the record button. You hit record, and it's going to record that screen and your mouse movement and anything that you say. So that's very simple.
Great, thank you. And that's something we're highly recommending, using the tools that are available. If you want to record yourself, that is. Again, great content out there. So now as I look at what I'm trying to teach my students for these 2 weeks, now I'm faced with how do I migrate that discussion-based environment that I value so highly into a digital environment. And there are lots of ways you can do this. Certainly, there's a tool in Blackboard for hosting discussion forums. Now, that will be a good fit for some of you and not a great fit for others. Managing that discussion board, I think, is really key. Setting up a discussion so that students understand why you're doing the discussion, how you're evaluating it. Should they respond to other people, or are they only posting their own content? These are parameters that you want to think about if you're going to host a discussion on a traditional kind of forums site. I know that other folks are really interested in using social media tools to have these kinds of discussions. I myself have used Twitter in the past with a dedicated hashtag that allows a real-time back channel. There are other tools that allow for that as well, that some folks here at the university use. I know others who experiment with private Facebook groups. You can make a Facebook group that's entirely private, just to your class. Now they have to be on Facebook to use it. But so the point of this, there are multiple ways of doing that. Juan, what are some of the most successful tools for discussion that you use in your work?
Well, for class discussion, I think Blackboard is going to be the best bang for your buck per se, because students are already familiar with the platform, and it is not difficult to put it in your course, and it is text-based, but you can also add pictures, links, or anything that you can share. And when we talk about, let's say, have students sharing their work, if they post something on YouTube or Google Drive, they can also share that link and post it on the discussion board as well for everyone.
Right, excellent. So those are just some of the considerations. I would normally base a lot of the assessment of this course on papers that students were writing with in-person conferences and things like that. What I would probably do in this circumstance is start to break those down into smaller interpretive assignments, reader response kinds of interpretations. So I'd spread out the work with less weight so that I could give more efficient feedback and allow students to kind of continually be working rather than building up to something. So that's another thing to think about. Again, choosing your learning goals first, thinking about the content that you have to cover, pairing it with a teaching strategy that has been successful for you and that can be easily converted into a digital environment using one of the many tools that are out there. Don't reinvent the wheel. Make decisions that you know are in the best interest of your student learning, and access the team here that's available to you. Okay, thank you, Juan, for your help. I'm going to go back to the PowerPoint. And I'm going to pass it to Jennifer, who's going to talk about some of the accessibility considerations that you'll want to be thinking about. Jennifer?
Hi, good morning. As it's already been stated, but I don't think it can be stated enough, I know this is a pretty stressful time for all of you and for all of us, really. So what we want to focus on as far as accessibility is making sure that students with disabilities that are registered with SDS on campus, who have specific accommodations related to accessing digital documents or any kind of digital content, that they are able to get the information that they need. I think right now we have about 130 students who rely on screen readers or other assistive technology to access the course content. So we want to make sure that if you have one of those students in your course, that we can work with you to make that content accessible. The same thing with captioning. If you have a student with an accommodation for captioning, then we will of course want to make sure that we get any new material that you might be using, whether it be your own created content, such as recording a Zoom lecture, or whether it is a YouTube video or Vimeo video that you found somewhere else. We want to make sure that we work with you to make sure that that content is captioned. So the best way to get in touch with us, I am an accessibility specialist. Lindsay Sneed is also an accessibility specialist in IT. So that's what we're here for during this time, is to make sure that we help you make your content accessible. Now, if you are interested and you think you may already be making your content accessible, because you might be surprised, I just want to show you a quick way to check using Microsoft's built-in accessibility checkers. So let's see.
Stop sharing the screen so you can pull yours up.
Okay. All right. So I'm just going to show you, I'm on a Mac right now, and I'll show you how, if you are using Word or it's located in the same place, no matter if you're using Word, PowerPoint, Excel, any Microsoft product. This is on a Mac. So I've got my Word document open. It contains, it's pretty basic. It does have some images. It's got headings, which are very important for accessibility. But I want to check by going to Tools, and then right there it says Check Accessibility. And on the right side of my screen, you can see that it gives me my error messages, like some of the, it looks like I'm missing alternative text. The great thing about the accessibility checker, if you're wanting to do this on your own, is at the bottom of the accessibility report or the inspection report, it tells you why it's important and how to fix it. Okay. So like it tells me at the bottom, alternative text is very important for people, non-sighted users, to be able to access visual content through a textual description. Same thing with PowerPoint. I would go again to my tools, check accessibility. Oops, it was already enabled, sorry. And I would have the same information. And it's a little bit different. The rules for accessibility in PowerPoint are a little bit different from those in Word. But basically, you know, having image alt text, having a clear document or PowerPoint presentation structure is very important. If you have questions about this and it's something that you want to tackle on your own, I want to point out on the Keep Teaching site within academic, the Keep Teaching site that has all the resources that you need as we transition to remote teaching or remote learning, there is an accessibility section that links to guides, like PDF guides on how to make your Microsoft Word documents accessible, PowerPoint, just some accessible web design basics that would be helpful even in Blackboard. And then we have an accessibility playlist in YouTube that might be helpful for you as well. But the main thing that I want to reiterate is that we are here to help you with captioning and making any documents accessible for those students who have an accommodation for those for the captioning and accessible documents. So again, you can reach us at accessibility@olemiss.edu. Thank you.
Great, thank you, Jennifer. Can you unshare your screen so I can?
Absolutely.
Thank you so much. Okay, now we're turning it over to Bob Cummings, who's going to talk just a little bit about the resources that we have here at the university to help you continue this work. Bob?
Yeah, great. Hey, everybody. I want to tell you about a couple things that we've developed to help you in this process. The main thing that we want to talk about is the website that we have developed, Keep Teaching. So you can see it under the second bullet point there. That's the address for the Keep Teaching website. It has been created expressly for you, and it is really a very large resource for just about everything that we think you're going to need. I would say that it has a lot on it right now already. I've been working on it for about 10 days, so don't let it overwhelm you. But it is a good resource and something I think that will prove to be useful over time. So all of our questions, a lot of the questions that I've seen come up in the chat board will be covered on the Keep Teaching website. Similarly, we have created a Keep Teaching email. So if you have specific questions that you haven't been able to get an answer for, feel free to use the Keep Teaching email address and send us questions there. We have created a sort of triage system for answering those, but we have been able to answer them pretty quickly so far. So please feel free to use that resource as well. That also sort of logically implies what's coming next, I think, which is a Keep Learning website. So all of these resources are developed with faculty in mind, but we're also working on and partnering with other divisions in the university to create a Keep Learning website that'll be student focused. And we're hoping that this website will be pretty holistic, that'll address sort of the need to maintain community, the need to provide resources for counseling, the need to provide resources for health, ways to answer financial aid questions, sort of making sure that we're able to get the right resources to students up front in this unusual time. So that will be forthcoming. Hopeful that that'll be, we'll have a draft version of that up by Wednesday. Happy to receive suggestions from you about content you might want to have on there. There also will be some upcoming FTDC workshops. So FTDC is going to have multiple workshops during this week, focusing on using Blackboard and Zoom and making documents accessible. The links for those workshops are on the Keep Teaching website again, which I've sort of jumped over here, but it's got three main portions to the Keep Teaching website: getting started, review resources, and get support. So if you go to the Get Support page, you'll be able to find the links to FTDC workshops on Zoom and Blackboard as well. Quickly, one last thing I would say is there have been questions about using Zoom in terms of FERPA and terms of Zoom's privacy arrangements, and also in terms of if you record students using Zoom, do you need to have their permission to do so? And so we have forwarded those questions through IT and legal, and we will have guidance on those specific questions forthcoming. I've got some opinions on that, but I'm going to not share it until we have exactly the right answers. So thankful for your questions and your thoughtful use about that. I think that's most of what I wanted to cover, Josh.
Sure.
And
that's great, Bob. Thank you. I just want to reinforce the Keep Teaching email address. Will get to one of us very quickly, and we can move out into some of those discipline-specific questions that you have. There's a team with different vectors of expertise that will plug in and kind of help with those. Similarly, the first bullet under the Get Support page, you see a Zoom link for on-demand support. So there will be people from our team on a dedicated Zoom link from 8 to 5 every day. It's kind of like a helpline, but it's more of a video conferencing helpline. So we'll have people staffed there that if you need immediate help, people will be there for you to access us in a kind of a video conference format. So we'll be there as well.
Josh, one thing I didn't mention also is the last bullet point there is about the idea of faculty champions. And so that's sort of a term that we're using for folks that might be in your department who are folks who have online teaching experience or might be particularly adept with educational technology. And so we have partnered with your chairs to create a list of these folks, and we're receiving those nominations, and we'll share those with you in any responses. So we will, if we have, let's say, just sociology, if we have someone that said, hey, I'm a faculty champion, I can help other people in sociology, perhaps, when we have questions and we have answers to those questions via Keep Teaching, we'll share that with your faculty champion. Back to you, Josh.
Thanks, Bob. Okay, well, now is the time to open the floor to Q&A. Any questions that we can answer in this format? I know a lot of questions have been asked and answered in the chat function, but we can also answer some here.
Josh,
Yes.
Somebody asked that they wanted to know about textbooks. Their students didn't take their textbooks home, so what do they do?
Right. Wow.
I have some information on that. The library is, in fact, sent an email to me during this call. They are, well, so I guess two answers to that question. First answer is the library is investigating ways to make textbooks more freely available via the library website than would normally be. So they don't have that guidance yet, but they're working on this problem and they think they'll have new guidance. Second is I believe that the university has opened access to dorms during the first part of this week, and so the idea is that students who are able to can retrieve resources. Obviously, that's not going to be perfect in every situation, so hopefully we'll be able to have information to you about increased access to textbooks via the library.
Great, thank
Josh?
you. Yeah.
Oh, sorry. Didn't mean to be that loud.
Okay, you sound like the great and powerful Oz back there.
Well, can you mute yours? Just anyway, am I echoing?
It's okay. We'll handle it.
Okay. I'm going to speak very softly. Anyway, I'm Brad Robinson. I'm in the music department and I teach voice lessons. And like a lot of us that do we also teach classes, and this has been really helpful. I have one question. It's been made pretty clear by a lot of our professional organizations that teaching these one-on-one voice lessons, Zoom is a really excellent platform for that. My question is this. Say, okay, I teach 13 individual lessons each week. Am I going to have to I'm very new to Zoom. Am I going to have to make a separate appointment for a separate section every week, 13 separate appointments every week and change that every week? Or can be a standing I don't know,
No, that's a good question.
meeting number that they would have their time that they would click in on?
Yes, definitely.
Yes, Brad, this is one. And yes, when you get into scheduling Zoom sessions, you can set it to recurring. So you can either use the same room for every student and just tell them to come at different times, or you can set up different rooms for different students.
Oh, that sounds wonderful. That you just lowered my stress level a whole lot, Juan. And hello, I haven't seen you in a long time. It's great to see you.
Yes, definitely. So a dedicated link for each student, or one that you just one for the whole thing that you just then tell them when to pop in. That's absolutely.
And that is so, oh, thank you, Lord. Blood pressure lowered 15 points.
That's why we're here. Okay, other questions?
Could I ask the question again about low tech? This is Jeff Jackson, or no tech solutions as well. I have many faculty asking me about students who have no online access and how we can make our course content available offline in addition to all of the technology.
No, that's a really great question. I think, so when you say that offline, no tech, what are you imagining? Just having the materials available for them to send to them actually via the mail, or?
Yeah, we used to do correspondence courses through the mail, phone calls, oral exams over the phone, sending in handwritten essays through snail mail, those kinds of things.
I think this is a situation where any and all solutions are viable. So to the degree that you are comfortable with the pace of mailing things and receiving things in the mail, I think that's perfectly appropriate. Phone calls, I would encourage that as well as a low tech kind of solution. You can do a lot of things through phone calls, even assuming students have cell phones, even group calls. So there are certainly options for that, and we could explore them individually as well if you'd like offline.
Thanks so much.
Other questions?
Hi, this is Debbie Hall. My question is, will students be allowed to sign into Zoom or get a Zoom account free of charge because they're in our class?
I believe so, but I'm going to ask Juan that question.
Students can sign up for Zoom for the free account, and they have the same capability that we can use with 40-minute time limit. But they can use all of the functions that we have available here.
40-minute time limit from, like, my standpoint, I can't do more than 40 minutes at a time with them, which is fine. That's
I mean, if you are, I thought you meant students getting together among themselves and discuss question. But if you need more time to teach your class, please send email to zoom@olemiss.edu, and they can help you with the upgrade.
Okay, thank you.
The basic Zoom account has those limitations, but there are ways for faculty to upgrade, as Juan was saying. Good. Other questions?
A follow-up to the question. Hello?
Hi, we can hear you, but only faintly. If you can maybe turn up your volume.
As a follow-up to the question that was asked in terms of limitations on Zoom, how many students can you have at a time on Zoom? Is there a number?
With the basic account, 100 is the limit. Is that right, Juan? Yes.
Yes.
How do we upgrade? Can you explain that to Zoom for it to have longer time?
Juan?
If you need more than 40 minutes, send email to zoom@olemiss for upgrade.
Anyone else?
Is that one time only?
No, it's going to be for your account for the rest of the semester. It's not just every time you want to use Zoom. I think they'll be inundated if they have to approve every time.
Just asking. Thank you.
I do have a question.
Sure.
If students have only 40 minutes, an account for 40 minutes, but we have a unlimited account, can we still meet with them for more than 40 minutes, or is it going to cut them off after 40 minutes?
Well, actually, students do not need an account at all if they're just going to join you in your class, and you're going to run this class. Say you have the license account, and you can run it as long as you want. Students don't need an account. The reason why I suggested student getting an account is when, say, in a situation where they need to work together and they want to maybe talk together, and they all have access to internet and can use Zoom, and it is a good platform for collaboration among students because they cannot just get together and meet outside of class.
That's perfect. Thank you.
That's a really important question that I know a lot of people have. And the parameters of the meeting are set according to the host's account. And so if you have unlimited, it doesn't matter what anyone else has. You have set the terms of the meeting. Is that right, Juan?
Yes. And when this 40-minute is over, they can just click on that same link and get right back on it. This is for students.
Perfect, thank you.
I have a question about Zoom as well. Hi, Josh. Hi, Juan. Thank y'all for doing this, by the way. Y'all are wonderful. So I have a question about, is it true that for the basic version of Zoom, you're not able to download the videos that you have recorded? It's my understanding that you need a pro account to do that for asynchronous learning, since I have large classes.
For a basic account, you only have access to record to local computer, so you don't need to download anything. It will already be saved on your computer.
Okay, that's great to know. Thank you so much.
Other questions?
I have a question. Is there a recommendation for how to address if students have limited internet?
Well, first, I think we need to find out what that means. What does limited internet mean? Is it limited broadband? Is it only certain amounts of time they can be on? What are the parameters? And then once we know those constraints, then we can work within it. So limited broadband would be more low-tech solutions. Only let's say a student doesn't have internet at home but could use the public library or something like that. Then that's a different sort of constraint. So once you find that out, contact me or anyone else on the team, and we can kind of work with the specific situation you have.
Yeah, this is Patty. If for the Keep Learning website, we're actually working on a needs assessment that faculty can push out to their students just to find out those questions. We're meeting today at 10:30 to talk about that. So more information will be coming, and we'll put that on the Keep Teaching website.
Yeah, I want to jump in and emphasize that, and I have a separate question as well. I know that in our department, sociology, we kind of keep tabs on our students, and a lot of our students only have a smartphone. They don't have a laptop or a desktop computer. So when they use a computer, they use a computer lab. And so that puts them in a tremendous disadvantage for certain kinds of platforms over others. And I'd hate to see, students who are already struggling financially due to this are now going to suffer academically as well. But my question was, I have been recording some lectures in the past for my online courses using the library's studio that they have, which is really nice. Is that still open and available to use so that I can, use that, because they have a green screen and you can do a lot of other things with it?
The last update we had from the library, and that was a great point earlier too, Miguel, that we have to keep in mind those who only have access to their mobile devices. The last update we had from the library was that studio will be open. If something changes with that, we'll post it on the Keep Teaching website.
And this is Patty again, just to jump in. Yeah, if a student only has their phone, there are just some things they can do. Like instead of asking them to write a response to you or write out their homework, they could do an audio recording. Like they could talk the assignment and give that to you as an audio file. You know, because it's just too much to ask them to do all that typing on their phone. The other thing is Blackboard is not very mobile friendly, but Google Drive is. So you could switch to sharing information out with them on Google Slides. They could maybe give you, if they had to do some writing with a Google form or Google Docs. It's not ideal, but they won't really be able to do much in Blackboard, but they'll have a lot more access with Google.
Other questions?
Yeah, speaking of Google, I know some K-12 systems are moving to the Google Classroom. Is that an option for higher ed, or is that only a K-12 platform? I know some K-12 platforms also use Blackboard, so I don't know how.
I mean, we already have access to Google Classroom. I mean, the students all do because they have their Go accounts. And I don't know if you have a Go account, Miguel, but every faculty member has access to a Go account. And we'll put some information on the Keep Teaching website at how to activate yours. But yeah, anything that is, any of the Google apps, our students already have access to those.
Could I have access to it through my Gmail account?
Yeah, yeah. If you want to use your personal Gmail, you can do that. But if you'd rather keep your personal Gmail and your professional Gmail separate, we can just activate your Go account for your professional, for your Ole Miss email.
Okay. That's great.
Good. Anything else?
There have been some good comments on the chat. Will that be available to us?
Yes, we're recording every session. That includes capturing all the chat responses. And we will upload the most recent, well, we'll have an archive on Keep Teaching, the Keep Teaching website, and we will be highlighting the most recent recording, but we'll have an archive of all of the sessions.
Yeah,
A
it will be on the, oops, I'm sorry, it will be on the support page.
A transcript of the chat would be most helpful.
Transcript. Oh,
Yes.
Can we do that one? Yeah. Okay.
Yes.
Yeah, we're open to doing what is most helpful, and so we can provide that transcript. And then everything, all the resources. When in doubt, go to olemiss.edu/keepteaching, and it should be there.
You can also save the chat.
Yes, we're going to do that as well.
Anybody can do it. I can do it on my own.
Okay, so yes.
You click on the right where there are the 3 dots.
I might be able to, right here.
Save chat.
And
Yeah.
where does that save to? Does it save on your local drive or does it save in your Zoom account?
It saves in your local drive, I think.
Yeah, it should be to your local.
Josh, we have another question. This is an accessibility question about the need for captioning videos.
Okay. Just do we need to? Is
Yes,
that
yes.
Okay. Jennifer can talk more about this. My understanding is that the only necessary captions are if you have a student with a documented SDS cleared accommodation. Otherwise, it's good practice, but it is not required. Jennifer?
Yes, that's absolutely true. Because these are not fully online courses, it's more remote teaching. And because it's kind of an emergency situation and time limited, then we're not requiring captioning like we would if it was a fully online course. But if you do want to caption, because captioning benefits not just those with who are deaf or hard of hearing, then YouTube makes it pretty easy to edit their auto-generated captions. And we do have instructions on how to do that on the Keep Teaching site and the accessibility website.
Great, thank you, Jennifer.
Thank you.
Okay, well, I think with that, we are going to wrap up. Again, you have the resources. We're going to save this and upload it onto Keep Teaching so that you have this here, and we'll do that with each session. I just want to reinforce that we are here. The whole team is here to help. You know, even if we don't have the answer right away, we know who does, and we will find the information and work with you on these individualized approaches to moving your courses over. Be well and do get in touch when you need us. Thank you very much.